Right, we are back after a short break, and what an amazing episode to kick off this series. Today I'm speaking to Dr. Tara Swart, neuroscientist and author of The Source. I already know that I'm going to have to invite Dr. Tara back for a part 2 because I absolutely loved this conversation and I just could not fit all of my questions into 1 hour. If you've been listening to this show for a long time, then I'm sure this is going to be right up your street. And if you are a new listener, then I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Power Hour. I'm Adrienne Herbert, wellness coach, international speaker and author. Each week I speak to a variety of guests, from business founders to Olympic athletes, leading coaches, change makers and innovators, to find out their daily habits, their rules to live by and what motivates them to get up out of bed each day. Personally, I am on a mission to encourage, motivate and inspire, so I hope that the Power Hour will help you to achieve your personal and professional goals. Welcome back to the Power Hour podcast. I'm so excited to be joined today by Dr. Tara Swart. Thank you so much, Tara, for joining us. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Well, firstly, I have to say, I really enjoyed listening to your book on Audible, The Source. Open Your Mind, Change Your Life. I was actually recommended the book by Rupi Aujla, and he talked about your book on the show when he was on in January. I downloaded it the next day, and honestly, I'm Audible obsessed. I listen to so many books on Audible. It's the one I can't think of a single product or service that I recommend to people more than Audible. It has been a game changer for me. So yeah, I wanted to start off by really diving in there and saying, I loved the book. I'm sure it's helped many other people to really understand the science behind all of it. So could you, for anyone listening who isn't familiar with you or your work, could you tell us about the concept, about the book, and also who you wrote the book for?
Thank you so much. I'm really glad you enjoyed it so much. I'm dying to know what speed you listen to books on Audible.
I listen in normal speed. I might talk fast, but I listen on normal speed.
I definitely thought the way that your energy, that you're somebody that probably listens like at 2 or 3 times the speed, but I was wrong. Okay, so The Source is basically about the laws of attraction and manifestation and visualization, but all backed up by neuroscience. It was an idea that I'd had in my mind, and I'm big on manifestation in my real life. But I wasn't going to do anything with it. It was an idea. I'd written 2 books. I don't enjoy writing ever since I did my PhD. It was quite a traumatic experience. And I'd become the neuroscientist in residence at the Corinthia Hotel, which was a really nice gig. And it got a lot of press because it was unusual. And so Penguin, Random House, had seen that press and approached me. And they said, we've got a lifestyle section with books on exercise, mindfulness, diet. And we think as a neuroscientist that you could write one that kind of brings all of those together. And without even thinking, I said, I could do that, but I have this other idea, and it's about visualization and vision boards and science. And later, the publisher said to me, I could have got the pen and the contract out right there and then. So that was really nice. And so I then spent the summer researching the laws of attraction and, these more esoteric things and seeing if they could be explained by science. And it was like 90% of them, it was just so obvious. And, I'd always thought about manifestation, that if it's to do with the power of your thoughts, it should be explained by psychology and neuroscience, but it's previously been explained by quantum science and frequencies and vibrations and things. So I was quite excited about it. It was the first time I wrote a book on my own, and actually a female mentor of mine who's a famous neuroscientist who's written a lot of books, I asked her advice and she said to me, one day you'll wake up and there'll be something that you cannot not write about, and wait till then. And this was definitely that book for me. I poured my heart and soul into it. I wrote it every weekend for the first year of my newly married life, whilst working full time, which for me includes going to Australia once a year and America 4 times a year and other trips. So it was intense. I was very disciplined. I went back to that sort of medical student mode of writing Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so In my personal experience, I had previously been divorced and used these sorts of tools. I, researched Buddhism and Jungian psychology and manifestation. I'd used those tools to really turn my life around. And so in my heart, whilst I was writing, the book was really for all these fabulous, smart, beautiful women that I know who have had one traumatic experience in their life, often to do with a relationship, and kind of never got back to being their best self again. And that's what really motivated me to write the book. But the beautiful thing about it since it's come out is that so many guys like it as well. And, I'd written about my upbringing, kind of the cultural gap being of Indian heritage growing up in the UK. And I sort of thought, if you're a divorced woman or a woman from a different culture, it would resonate with you. But, I remember my friend's brother, my friend gave it to her brother, who's like, a very sort of white public school young man. And she said he wouldn't talk to me all weekend because he was just obsessed with the book. And that's when I think I knew that it had really wide appeal. And so the concepts of using your own brain to make your life better, well, that's got to appeal to everyone, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, there's so much of what you said then I could resonate with, definitely the writing experience and having to be really disciplined with my time writing the book. I also wrote a lot over weekends too. And also just, thinking about when people want to make a change in their life, whether it is after a divorce, whether it's after changing career, maybe leaving school, there are different things for different people. But I think it's interesting that, maybe you had an idea in your mind that those types of people or those women would relate. And actually the book has reached a lot more people. And I found that too with older people enjoying my book. Not that I didn't think they would, but for example, I know that, a lot of people who've reached out and who've read the book and said, I'm really ready to embrace change in my life, have been, later on in their life, whether it's post 40s, 50s, even 60s. So, I think that's quite an interesting thing to explore and understand. Why do you think that is, that people maybe as they older and later on in their life or their careers, that they're actually more willing to embrace new ideas, new concepts, and to make changes?
Yeah, I think it's because as you get older, because I fall into your older category, Adrienne, that you realise that change happens, you can't prevent it. And so the best way to equip yourself to manage change that comes from outside is to be more open to embracing it. And actually from neuroplasticity, which is the ability of the brain to grow and change throughout life, we understand that if you bring change into your life, you actually build up that resilience to external or unexpected change. So even something like learning a new language or learning a musical instrument or, travel abroad, eating food that you've never eaten before, all of those things build up to prepare you better for the changes that life throws at you.
Yeah, and it's such an exciting and enriching thing to do as well. I think about people that really like repetition and they're creatures of habit, and they stick in their box and they stay in their lane or whatever how you would describe it. But I do think it's far more exciting and enriching to really challenge yourself every year, every season, whatever, to think, can I learn something new? Can I go somewhere new? Can I meet someone new? How exciting. And actually, I think a lot as well around the small decisions that we make and the big decisions that we make. And I think often when people ask me for advice or tools, and they'll say they think it's going to be these big decisions, these big moments, whether it's about changing your life. But what I think I'm learning is actually it's the small changes. It's the small daily changes or decisions or habits that compound over time that actually have the biggest impact. Would you agree?
Totally. So, I'm all about vision boards. I actually call them action boards because I'm not one of these people that says, create this fantasy life and then sit at home and wait for it to happen. I very much believe that you have to go out there and do things to make it happen. So I do have those sort of big picture ideas at the beginning of each year. But a real game changer for me was the year that I chose 2 or 3 habits per quarter, so every 3 months. And they were small things. And I only worked on those small things for 3 months until they were like natural habits. And what I found at the end of that year was that there were 10 to 12 things that I now did without even thinking about it that I wasn't doing a year ago. And I've never had that kind of result with like New Year's resolutions, for example.
Yeah. And I guess if you have Maybe it was, I think having that real focus as well, the to do one thing or to do two things or to do even three things, but really having focus on one small thing at a time. I think it's really powerful. And actually one of my neighbors, so I mentioned about people who read the book that I didn't necessarily think would. One of my neighbors, he's 82 years old. He is just he's so wonderful. He's quite nosy actually, so he loves to come can knock on people's doors and have a chat, especially during lockdown. But he told me after reading my book, he said, I really enjoyed it. And he said, I'm open to change. And he said that when he was in his 50s, he had a heart attack and he had to have heart surgery. And after the surgery, the surgeon told him that it's really not going to be good for you to be sedentary. You need to keep moving and you need to keep active. And at the time, he said he was very sedentary. His life revolved around a lot of driving and a lot of sitting. And the surgeon said, you really need to be more active every single day. He is now 82, as I said, and he goes for a daily walk twice a day. So every morning and every evening, he goes for a walk. I see him leave his house. I see him come back every single day, rain or shine or snow. And he has done that for 29 years and he's never missed a day. He's never missed a day. And because of that, the surgeon saying to him, the small thing. So for him to do that walk around the block, it probably takes him, I'm going to guess, I don't know how fast he walks, but it's probably 30 to 40 minutes, but he does it twice a day. Now, he's never run a marathon. He's never hit the gym hard. He's never, said, all right, I'm going to change my life and get fit and healthy. But he's never missed that in 29 years. I think it's such a good example of this small compound effect. How healthy, I don't know, how healthy his heart, his blood pressure, he looks like he looks vibrant and he's got he looks like he has a good body composition in terms of his weight. And just how impactful that small thing every single day. I just use him as an example all the time.
Totally. I mean, if he's 82 and he's doing 30 to 40 minute walks a day, I'd say his heart's in pretty good condition.
Yeah, absolutely. So I also want to loop back to when you mentioned vision boards and calling them action boards. I absolutely love that because I am someone who's all about action. And just like you said, it's not about, wish for it, dream for it, close your eyes and just wait. And, it's just going to fall into your lap because let's be honest, that is certainly not the world in the way that I've experienced it. And if you just, write a list and a plan and a dream, that's great. I think you have to do that, but actually making those steps to making it actions, habits, behaviors, where should people start? If someone's listening and thinking, okay, I've heard of vision boards before, maybe they've even back in the day, cut out some pictures or changed their screensaver, or they've written a list of how much money they want to earn, where they want to live, the kind of life they want to have, but they feel like it's so out of reach. They feel like it's just a dream almost, or like a wish. How can they start to make those vision boards action boards?
Yeah, so I do think it's a work in progress because I've been doing it, I think, for 12 or 13 years now. And it certainly started out smaller. When you practice visualization and manifestation as a way of life, I have to say, Adrian, that sometimes incredible things do just seem to fall out of the sky. But that's on the back of 12 years of creating these boards and making the things on them happen. So, when I first started out, I was actually working with a friend who was a coach on my action board. And she said to me, how much money do you want to earn next year? This was the first year of setting up my business. And so I named the amount that I needed to, to pay the bills and, sort of have, not worry about money, basically. And she said, I think you should put double that on your vision board. And I thought that was ridiculous and unachievable, but I thought, why not put a bigger goal up there? Then maybe I'll earn more than more than 50% of it. In a year, I had earned the number that I put on that board. And for the first 3 years of my business, I doubled the number each year, and that actually came true. But you can imagine, like, going from being an NHS doctor to starting up an executive coaching business, how much networking and hard work I had to do to make that happen. So, it certainly didn't fall out of the sky, but there was definitely a motivation from seeing that number and knowing that I'd achieved it once and that I could do it again. Later, I just put imagery that represented abundance. So I guess that was the turning point where my board started to become more metaphorical than literal. So 1 year, for example, the year that I made my business a limited company, all I had was an image of a horse kicking up some water, because to me, the horse represented loyalty and stability and like a team. and the kicking up water was causing some sort of disruption. And that was the year that I started using heart rate variability technology in coaching, which, you know, hadn't really been done before. I like sort of spotting, you know, trends in technology and trying to use them in my work. So what I would say to people is take some time to have an idea of what you really want. And it does have to be realistic, but it can be big picture. So, you know, it can't just be like a super yacht and a private jet, but it can be, you know, a nicer home or a partner or a pregnancy or starting up your own business or travel. You can even do it in sections like that. Look out for images that appeal to you that represent these sorts of things. And then set aside some time to actually go through magazines and just find images or perhaps a few quotes, although I don't like too much writing on them, that just really speak to you but don't necessarily relate to something that you know that you want. Because we mustn't be limited by only what we know. We have to be open to a bit of magic as well. So I also leave space on my board because, well, practically I don't want my life to be cluttered and too busy, but also I leave, you know, space for that magic to happen, for something that I couldn't have imagined to perhaps come into my life. So then you would place the images on your piece of paper or cardboard or pinboard, whatever. And even if there were things on there that you definitely thought you wanted, if the imagery feels wrong, you have to remove it. If, like I said, if there are images that you just like, but you don't know why, but they feel right, then keep them on there. I always leave it overnight or for a weekend in a sort of pet-proof, child-proof, wind-proof area. And, you know, maybe move them around a bit and just see what should be connected to other images and what needs to be kind of on its own. And then really challenge yourself. Is everything I want on this board? Is there anything that's not on there that should be on there? Is there something on there that actually I feel like shouldn't be on there? So get it right and then glue it down. Keep it somewhere really visible so that you see it at least twice a day. So bedroom's a really good place. And there's a special sort of subliminal effect of what you see last thing at night. So, you know, that's another doubly good reason to have it there. But, you know, when I lived on my own in my flat, I used to have it up on the wall in my bathroom. And so if anybody came to visit me and went to the loo, they would see it. So, you know, I sort of wasn't ashamed of anything that was on it. Even when it had like the number of how much money I wanted to earn and stuff. And I do think that holds you a bit accountable as well, because people know what you're working on and they can help you or ask you, like, you know, how's it going? These days you can do the board digitally on Pinterest or Corculus and keep it as your screensaver, like you mentioned. And so it's creating the board in the first place, which equates, you know, to some level of feeling that you deserve it, which is really important. Looking at it regularly and visualizing the things on it becoming true. Those are the sort of 3 really important steps.
Yes. Oh, wow. So many things then you were saying. The first one I want to pin back to was when you said realistic. So I really challenge, you know, what people believe to be possible for themselves and for their lives determines essentially what realistic even means. And, you know, if you said, you know, yeah, I want to be an Olympic gold medalist in the marathon, or I want to be an astronaut, and someone says to you, oh, it's not realistic, then yeah, potentially there's a real, you know, fact as to why it's not. But when you said about doubling your income, I knew before you continued to tell us that you then earn that money, I knew that would be the case. Because maybe it's my mindset. Maybe it's because I've developed a growth mindset. Maybe it's because I don't limit my ambition. And I always say to people when at one point in my book, I say, what if your biggest goal is 10 times too small? And, you know, when your friend said to you, the coach said to you, double it, you then, because the number was bigger, and as you said, you kind of went, oh, maybe I'll earn 50% more, or I think that's what I really encourage people to do, is they limit their own belief of what they think is possible with this word realistic. You know, oh, I'd love to do that, Adrienne, but I can't because I've got kids, or I can't do that because of X, Y, and Z, and I could never. And they kind of give me a long list of reasons that they must limit their ambition. And when I challenge people to say double this, that was actually, it's funny, I felt like I could have been that coach, because I am literally all my friends, I'm like, double it, it's what you deserve, double that, it's what you deserve. And we laugh about it, but we mean it. It's like whether it's it's the size of the glass of wine or it's the size of your invoice, double it, it is what you deserve. So I really feel like if people could understand that the first thing is actually, accepting that this is possible for you. This is realistic. This is something that, even if it feels, like a huge leap from where you are today, it is possible. And really understanding that, so that when you look at that board, so that when you put those pictures or those words, if you don't believe, do you know what I mean? What's the mention about neuroscience? What's the science that's actually happening there that makes it so that when you see something like that? In a previous episode, I interviewed Tom Daly, and he actually, whether he knew it was visualization, whether he knew it was an action board or not, he said that he had a book, like a diary, and he'd drawn a picture of the Olympic medal that he wanted for 2012, and he'd put 2012, the Olympic rings, the medal, and he'd been looking at that since he was 13 years old. So when he got up on the diving board, to do that dive to win that medal, he had that image in the front of his mind. And I think that was such a powerful, these visuals are so powerful. So what is the real science there that's making those dreams a reality?
So first of all, that Tom Daly story, I do know it, but I literally got goosebumps when you said it again. And secondly, everyone needs a best friend like you. So what really came to my mind as you were speaking about your friends and people that you encourage in that way is that Marianne Williamson quote, which says, your greatest fear isn't that you'll fail, your greatest fear is that you'll succeed beyond your wildest imagination. And sadly, there's this negative gearing in the brain that's a protective mechanism through evolution that works to bring up negative memories to stop us from taking risks. So basically, when let's say you're going to take a risk after a painful breakup of dating again, your brain, the amygdala, where the emotions come from, and the hippocampus, where memories are embedded, they get together and say, let's remind Adrienne of every bad date she's ever had. Let's remind Adrienne of every painful breakup she's ever had, because if she goes out there and does this again, she could have her heart broken, and we want to protect her from that. But the thing is, if you listen to that voice, you'd never do anything. So that mechanism protected us from physical predators when we were in the cave. In the modern world, that mechanism, to some extent, we still need it, but in things like our life, our health, our relationships, our wealth, we need to be able to override that natural default mechanism. And you mentioned the word abundance, and you're the embodiment of abundance, but that's what we need to cultivate in our brains, that I do deserve this, I could make that happen. And I just want to come back and qualify what you were saying about realistic. I think there's two sides to the coin there, and it's really in the word real, which is where in the book I've written about magnetic desire is a really strong emotion and motivation to achieve these things. And that's why it can't be what she's got or the house he lives in or what everybody thinks they should have. It must be from your brain, your heart and your gut what you want for your life.
Yeah, exactly. The individual yourself, and not in a selfish way, but I think that actually brings me on to my next big meaty question and topic, which I want to discuss with you, Tara. And this is so timely because this is something that I have been challenging myself to really think deeply about for the last few weeks, and I haven't really got to a conclusion. So I'm hoping you can help me. And, you mentioned then about relationships, about career, around health, and around the individual. So not looking left and right and looking at other people, but focusing on yourself. Now, apparently we are more than ever as a culture, as a society, we are dissatisfied. So we are apparently in a pandemic of dissatisfaction. And this idea that because we can see what other people are doing, what other people have, whether that's through social media, whether it's through just general media and television, we can see other people's bodies, other people's lives, other people's homes, other people's cars, other people's children, other people's qualifications, whatever. But so as a result, we are feeling more dissatisfied than ever and unhappier than ever. And so we have this desire to change and to make things better and to consume and to be the victim of capitalism and to say, okay, get a better, upgrade your phone and upgrade your life and get a better bigger house and a better car and travel more and have a better career and a better husband and just more, 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 more. Now, the reason I'm challenging myself on this is because I feel that I am, abundantly grateful for what I currently have, whether that's the home that I live in, my son, my body and my ability to run and train for marathons. I feel like I am abundantly grateful. But at the same time, it's not mutually exclusive of this idea that I am the ultimate self-improver and I want to improve. And I'm obsessed with, I read self-development books. I want to understand behavior and high performance. I continuously challenge myself, whether it is to train for an endurance event or to do another course or read another book. This idea that human potential, can I make it 1% better, 1% better, 1% better? So as a result, can you understand why I'm stuck between the two of thinking, well, am I just doing that as well? This result of Adrienne, make yourself better, learn more, acquire more skills, do more. Is that dissatisfaction? Because on the other side, I'm thinking this is the best time ever to be alive, to be a woman. When people talk about being dissatisfied with their careers or their lives or their relationships, I think as a woman of color, if I was to go back 100 years, 200 years, even 50 years, I'm like, that this is better than ever, in terms of access, in terms of equality. I know it's not perfect. I'm not going to, it's not perfect, but, go back to when there was world wars, go back to when there was famine and plague. And so you can imagine it's a big topic, but what I would love to know from you, Tara, is, what do you think is going on here when it comes to dissatisfaction and our expectation of our lives?
Wow, that's a really, really big topic and a great topic. I think it's disheartening to hear that we're more dissatisfied than ever. That definitely should not be the case. And let's actually put aside all of the external influences that you mentioned, because there's a few things here. So one is being grounded in yourself so that you're less subject to volatile outside influences. And one is having a strong sense of purpose. And, what sits really, really comfortably with listening to you and, looking at you is how much you live and breathe what is clearly your purpose. And, you've got, I would say, self-improvement and learning and the edge and performance are your sort of key words around your purpose. For me, neuroplasticity is the word. And, I'm so grateful that I was brought up bilingual and I learned another language at school and another language as an adult. And, I did play a musical instrument, but I'm actually currently learning a different one. So each year I take on a new learning, because that's my version of self-improvement is, sort of growing the flexibility of my brain. And so I think that when you have a strong sense of purpose, that's very motivating. That keeps you going even through difficult times and doesn't completely take away any thoughts of envy or comparison, but it makes it easier to re-anchor yourself if that ever happens. There's an interesting exercise in the book that you might remember, which is about, alongside gratitude lists, that you also do a list of accomplishments or achievements or things you're proud of. Because I think that people like us and people in general, they set these big goals. We're very lucky, we usually achieve them. And then we move on to the next thing. And we don't take enough time to savor the things that we've achieved. And that, I think, builds up to this level of dissatisfaction. I have a friend who's a tenured professor at probably the best university in the world. And in her sort of, group of people on a personal development journey, she said, I just want to have a voice and be heard. And everyone was like, you're a professor at the best university in the world, you get heard, girl. And she just needed to acknowledge that. And I think that sometimes we live with these insecurities and inadequacies that we've had since we were children. And one of the questions that I ask people is, what are you still fighting for that you actually don't need to fight for anymore? And I think, just sitting down and writing this list of achievements and accomplishments is just as beneficial as writing a gratitude list. With gratitude lists, I also learnt over time, because, it gets a bit boring when you do it every day and you just say, my friends, my family, my health, my ability to travel. So you start thinking, okay, what else could I put on it? And what really made a big difference for me was starting to go more towards internal resources. So saying things like my determination, my vulnerability, my creativity, my resilience. Because once you start priming your brain with words like that, then you think, okay, if something goes wrong in my life, or if I look at somebody else and think, I'd like to have what they have, I can come back to this internal toolkit and find the way to create that reality in my life. And that's very, very empowering. It's completely different from gratitude being around external things. And, so I think there's a theme here, which is, external influences, and then your core, your purpose, your sense of yourself.
Yeah, and actually that's potentially what was missing from my thinking on this is the purpose, because you're right. I certainly know exactly why I do what I do, and that's what ties everything together. Every decision that I make, it's all, I know exactly, as you said, to encourage and to help people to become high performing or to optimize their lives and to improve. So it makes sense that that's what I'm interested in. It makes sense that I continue to do that myself, because how could I encourage others if I can't do it myself? But I think that sense of purpose is potentially what was missing, because I think that often, I just think they can be pitched as quite binary things of either you're dissatisfied, so therefore you want to change your life and self-improve, or you're abundantly grateful and you're happy and then you just live every day smiling because you're grateful. I think there's definitely got to be a halfway house. And when you said about those empowering words about like being grateful for your determination or your resilience, that's actually something that, as a mother of a 9-year-old son, that's something that I'm really trying to do with him, actually, especially in the last year in the pandemic. It's been really challenging for children, for young people to not, it's been challenging for us as adults. So you can imagine, for them to understand the emotions that they're feeling, feeling frustrated, feeling angry, feeling potentially afraid, feeling all these different things. And that's one thing I've been trying to do with him, is that I know is so powerful, is to really talk to him about these strong words and about gratitude, but also in a way that he can understand, the things that he has, that he can say, that he can do, whether he writes it down or, he has a few, I guess they are positive affirmations actually, in his bedroom by his desk. And I don't know, I think when you're, when people talk about if your parents were really, I don't know, pushy in one direction, you kind of go the other way. So if they were super, I don't know, strict with finances, then you might be really reckless. I'm kind of interested to see how this goes, because I feel like having these like empowering words like on your wall when you're 9 years old, I'm wondering if he's just going to go, I feel like he rolls his eyes and goes, yes, Mum, I know, I'm able, I'm capable, I'm strong, I'm smart. And he's probably just thinking, yeah, whatever. But hopefully when he's older, that will have sunk in a little bit.
Oh, that actually brought tears to my eyes. I mean, what a lucky boy. I agree with you. This last year has been so awful for children. But regardless of what's going on at the moment and in the last year, this stuff should be taught in schools. These are the skills that actually get people through life. I think the schooling system needs a real overhaul, and with the mindset and the resilience piece as a very, very top priority in that, and mindfulness.
If you're looking for the next best thing to invest in, try investing in your long-term health with Forward. Forward is intelligent medicine with a personal touch. Their doctors are dedicated to catching top killers like cancer and heart disease early, which could save you tens of thousands of dollars in the long run. So invest in a doctor that's invested in you. Visit GoForward.com to learn more about how Forward can help you manage your long-term health risks for one flat monthly fee. That's GoForward.com.
I had another thought about the dissatisfaction question, because it's such a big topic, which is that negative gearing of the brain that I mentioned earlier, because of that, we tend to notice what we don't have rather than what we have. And so I've been doing, in the last year, using neuroplasticity to actually work on happiness. And what I've noticed that I do now is that I am much more consciously note when I'm happy or something really good has happened. Whereas before, that sort of got taken for granted, and there'd be a much bigger focus on something that, wasn't working out, or, a sad moment or something like that. So I'm not saying that I don't have those, but I would say that I've equalized them a lot more. So I notice when good things happen, and I actually stop and say to myself, oh, I'm really happy, And I'll share it more with my husband, for example, and say, like, can you believe this just happened? And, we'll sort of have a laugh about it, especially when it's kind of manifestation things. And, one day I've said, oh, I'd really like to be on Adrienne's podcast. And then the next day, Rupi says, I'm going to introduce you to Adrienne. I mean, things like that have actually happened.
Yeah, no, I'm smiling because the same thing happens to me. And it's interesting when you said earlier in the interview, sometimes things do feel like they drop out of the sky. And I certainly, as I said, it's not about wishing for it, but I have those moments too, where I'm like, I want to work with this person. I don't know how, I don't know when, or I want to, I might think of a publication, whether it was back in the day, I might have taken Vogue or Forbes or Elle. And I don't write exactly what or how or what, or even when, but when it does, as you say, then you get that email or you get that call. You are sometimes just like, you see, it kind of gives you that boost of like, yes, this is really powerful. And yeah, looping back to the dissatisfaction again and thinking about what you don't have versus what you do, really noting those happy moments. Do you think it's quite a British thing, when people go like, oh, how's work going? Or, oh, how are you? And people, I often feel like, if you just list all the good things, this has really been great, and actually I just got this great job, or I did this amazing interview, or I'm really happy that I've just finished writing my book, or whatever the thing is. I feel like it's quite a British thing. So you feel like you're being boastful or showing off. So then we do the opposite, and we go, oh, everything's okay, but you know what? Oh, this isn't being, or I haven't worked out, or I'm a bit stressed out, or my mum's a bit of a nightmare. And people want to list the bad things first, just so that they can kind of have this like mutual thing to moan about, instead of saying, you know what, let me tell you all the great things that are happening right now in my life.
Totally. I think the default is that we will connect more with people by saying what's not going well in our life. And it really comes back to that quote, which is that we're afraid to say how good things are because we think people might get jealous or they might not like us. But, what I found is that and it's not necessarily whether it's like a really good thing or a bad thing, but I've made a decision recently to wind up my corporate work and focus more on spirituality and philanthropy. And I had to have some quite tough conversations with very long-standing, clients and universities about this. And I was nervous about it. And what's been so lovely is how many people have said, you're like my idol, you're my role model. Like, you just say what you want to do and what you don't want to do, and you go and do it. But I'm still a human. So I was like nervous about it. But then getting that feedback from people, I have to say, actually, a lot of them were American, so maybe I'm not really answering the question. But I know that if you said those things to me, like all these things are going great, that would inspire me. But I think that comes back to the work, that I've done to be grounded and not suffer from dissatisfaction. And but I also want to say that, since getting married again, I live in a really big house, but I'm not happier than I was when I lived in my tiny, tiny flat in Shepherd's Bush. I was still the same person. And so I think it comes back to external validation not being so important to you. And actually, when I got married, one of my best friends, who I was at boarding school with when I was 16 and he was 17, I mean, those were the days where I didn't board, but I was a day girl, but I had a desk in his room. I mean, that would be illegal these days for a boy and a girl to be sharing a room at boarding school. Yeah. So, we have a very strong bond. He's like a brother to me, and he spoke at my wedding. He said all sorts of amazing things about me. And the last thing he said was, I've known her since she was 16, and she's exactly the same person that she's always been. And that was like the most meaningful thing to me. So I really feel, just having this discussion with you, that sense of self and purpose is so important. And, it feels like some people have it innately, but if you don't, then take that time to step back and create that for yourself. Otherwise, it's very easy to feel rudderless and then dissatisfied.
Yeah, absolutely. And to feel like if regardless of, as you said, your environment changing, whether that's your home that you live in, whether it's the work that you do, the title of your job, it doesn't define you, and therefore it doesn't elevate you to suddenly you're bigger or better, or the opposite of that. Absolutely. This is brilliant. And you actually, when you said then about you've done that work, for anyone listening, I know you talk about self-reflection and some questions that you can ask yourself to kind of give you these prompts to reflect. And one of them that you wrote was, what are my values and am I being true to them? So if someone's listening and maybe they haven't haven't been on that journey yet of real self-reflection and self-awareness. Maybe they don't really fully understand what they want, what their values are. Maybe they kind of feel like they're going through the motions, you know, like this is the job that I do, this is where I live, this is who I am, and it's just who I am. How can people start to self-reflect and to bring awareness to who they really, really are?
That's such a lovely question. Thank you. So I think the first answer to that is time. We are always so busy. This is another thing. If you say like, how are you? How's work? It's always like, oh my God, I'm so busy. Like that's a really good thing. We're so busy doing that we don't spend any time just being. So taking that time to step back and ask yourself, the question that I posed at the beginning of the book was, is your life panning out exactly how you always hoped it would? If not, read on, and the next step is identifying those values and purpose. And I find the easiest way to identify your strongest value is, what is a quality that you dislike most in other people? And the opposite of that is probably your top value. There's all sorts of ways of playing around with it and reflecting, like 3 words to describe yourself. Also, it being curious and exploring, and that could be anything from Jungian psychology to astrology or, doing a personal development course or something, to just get to know yourself better and understand what really motivates you and demotivates you. And then just notice it once you've sort of started to articulate that, just noticing in life what triggers you, what makes you, really smile. And then I think you get a stronger sense of what your values are.
Yeah, exactly. What makes you smile? What gives you more energy? I say to people sometimes, what gives you more energy than it takes? What's the thing? Because we know when we ask someone a question, don't we, whether it's about a specific topic, we know that when you're passionate about something, and I think this passion and purpose are separate, but when you're passionate about something, I really think it evokes actually, a reaction, and that can be good or bad. So it can be like, you get really irate, people get really angry, they get really frustrated, they're like, oh, this. It's like, wow, they're really passionate about that. Or vice versa, they're like, oh, you know what? Yeah, and they tell you more, and they can talk all day about this topic that you might not even be that interested in, but they are passionate about it. And so I think sometimes it's like, what's the thing that where it lights you up and you can talk about it and you want to tell people about it? Because maybe just, starting there and thinking, maybe that's what you then build yourself and your values around. So let's talk a little bit about the Power Hour, as it is the Power Hour podcast. I know you know the concept of the Power Hour, and anyone listening to the podcast, for even new listeners, old listeners, they know all about me and my Power Hour. So Tara, what is the first hour of your day like? And actually, what time does your day start?
I'm so embarrassed to answer this question.
Hey, there's no judgment on this podcast. There's no right or wrong.
I just want to say that about 12 or 13 years ago, when I was starting up my business, I met someone, through networking, but who became a friend. He said to me, name one person that you know who's super successful that wakes up at 8 o'clock. And 10 years later, I said to him, do you remember when you said that to me? And he went, yeah, it's you.
Yes.
So basically, even when I did my PhD, which is very, very self-motivated, I worked from, my hours were 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. because I just naturally wake up at 8. I mean, when I was at school and obviously at school, I had to wake up early, but I hated it. At university, I actually was a cox for the rowing team. So, I did get up at ungodly hours in the middle of winter and stuff and go and do that. So like you said, where there's a passion, you can do it. But I've structured my life so that I can wake up at 8 o'clock. In the last year with the pandemic, I haven't used an alarm clock once. I've just woken up naturally. And my husband wakes up at 5:15. So there's like 3 hours of the day that we're not even like awake and conscious at the same time. Yeah. And what he started doing now in the pandemic, which is just so cute because it used to only be at weekends, is that he comes back to bed for a cuddle around 8:15. So that's how I know what the time is. And one day when he was really busy and didn't come up for a cuddle, I was like, how am I supposed to know that it's time to wake up if you don't? So basically I sort of naturally become conscious around 7:15, and I stay in bed till 8:15, and I reflect, just on nothing specific, and definitely not about work. I just let my mind wander. It might be about a friend of mine that I've spoken to recently. It might be about, literally just, it's called voluntary mind wandering, which is very different to daydreaming. So it's a good old reflect and check in with myself. And sometimes I'll be lying in bed and smiling, and then I do a body scan. I put my left hand on my belly and my right hand on my heart and do some deep breathing. At times, if I'm getting coaching and I'm working on a particular exercise, then I'll do that exercise in bed. I'll do some form of meditation, either Vedic meditation or I would count that coaching reflection as a form of meditation. And then I also do some stretches in bed. And by the time I've done, and I drink my glass of water straight away. By the time I've done those things, usually my husband's appeared at the door. So that's my power hour is more of a Zen hour.
It sounds delicious, especially the husband part. I was just thinking though, for some people listening who during the pandemic, because I've had a lot of questions, as I'm sure you have, around, feelings of overwhelm, feelings of stress, anxiety, and a lot of people saying to me, actually, it's really helped them to have a structure in the morning that is a 3-step structure, or that when they wake up, they open the curtains and they get out of bed straight away, make the bed, don't get back into the bed. And if someone's listening to that and thinking, oh, that sounds great, but actually if I lay in bed awake, if maybe they start to have spiral of catastrophizing thoughts, and they start to overthink, and what about all the worries of the day and all the worries of their life, they kind of lay there and how do you keep that positive, and how do you check and not allow the mind to wander onto all the negative things that are happening in the world?
Well, I mean, the way that this came about, and God only knows if I'll be able to keep doing this once we go back to normal, but the way it came about is that I felt so much pressure to do everything first thing in the morning. When I was trying to get my regular meditation practice or my regular exercise practice, people's advice is always do it first thing in the morning, get it done first thing in the morning. And I was like, how many things am I supposed to do first thing in the morning? And I have more time for myself in the morning because I work on the US time zone. So,
right.
Having said that I wake up at that time, I do work till later. I really get what you're saying, but, when I wake up and I look at the clock and I see that it's, about 7ish and I have that hour, the first thing I do is smile because I'm like, I can stay in bed for an hour. It's so nice. And right. I think all of my regular journaling, meditation, gratitude practice that I've done in the past, which now is just more like a sort of non-conscious way of living rather than actual practices. I think they've helped me to not go down that negative road. To me, that hour is like a treat. It's like my favorite hour. Like, as a teenager, I always loved just waking up and staying in bed. So I guess it works for me. Yeah. But I think that if it doesn't work for other people, then having a positive affirmation that's the opposite of the statement that, the negative thought. I've found that really useful in the past. So Buddhism says replace negative thoughts with positive thoughts. And neuroplasticity says that if you overwrite negative thinking with a positive statement, then eventually that becomes more natural for you. And, I'm not saying something like, I feel like I have no control over my life, say I have complete control over my life. I'm talking about something that helps you to manage that anxiety. So it could be something like, we're in unprecedented times. Nobody feels that level of control over their life at the moment, but I will get it back. So it's something like that. And it's that self-talk. And, there's another term that I love, which is metacognition, which is thinking about your thinking. So, if that, on the occasion that obviously could happen to me, I could wake up and have a negative thought. I would lie there and think, this is interesting. All right, Tara, why are you thinking about this? Like, what's going on in your life? I literally have a conversation with myself, but it's focused on awareness of what I'm thinking rather than getting dragged down the slippery slope of that thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, Tara, so many people, I'm sure lots of people listening to this are going to be really happy, and they're going to probably reach out and be like, yes, because obviously some people come on the show and they're like, yes, I get up at 5, I do this, I do that, before the kid. And as I say, that is my truth. That is how that's how I carve out time in my morning, which is free from distraction, because I'm so easily distracted as well. I need that time before other people are awake so that I can actually be in solitude. But I know that some people, previous guests have come on and said, I wake up at this time, or I have a slow start, or I do this, or I do that. So I'm sure lots of people will be listening and thinking, great, it's the power hour is, so it's not a one size fits all. And it's also, it's theirs for you. It's there for people to take and say, actually, how can you make this work best for you? Because essentially what you're saying then is the same principle. You have that hour to do what you want to do without, having to give your time, your attention, your focus, your energy to anybody else. You're giving to yourself first. So that's what I hope people will take, is give to yourself in whatever way that is.
Do you know what? I've just remembered something hilarious. It was about 6 or 7 years ago. One of the main newspapers asked me to contribute to a feature that was about the early morning habits of successful people. And I totally said to my friends, like, they're not asking me because I'm a successful person. They're asking me as a neuroscientist to comment on the people that they'll feature. And then the feature came out, and I was one of the people, and I was literally the only one that woke up at 8 o'clock. And it was like Richard Branson and everyone else saying, I wake up at 5 and I go for a run. And I was like, oh my God, this is so funny.
Well, there you go. You see, as you said, as your friend said, name one person. Tara Swart. There you go. Take it. Brilliant. Okay, Tara, thank you so much. I've absolutely loved this episode. So before I power through my quick fire round, can you tell the listeners of the show where they can find more of your work, where they can find the book, and where they could reach out to you?
Yes, thank you. So I'm most interactive on Instagram at Dr. Tara Swart, but I'm also on Twitter. My book, The Source, Open Your Mind, Change Your Life, is available. Well, currently it's pretty much got to be Amazon, but obviously it's in bookshops as well. It's actually available in 36 languages. So wherever you are in the... I know, that was another vision board story at the offices of Penguin Random House. That was incredible. And for me, it just feels like I've been able to speak to so many people. And that's really, that was a huge motivation behind the book, to reach more people. And so thank you so much, Adrian, because being on your podcast will really, make that happen for me as well. So I'm super grateful.
You're so welcome. So let's dive into the quickfire round. And I'm going to try to keep it quick because I am long-winded. So first one is, can you tell us one item that you have purchased for £100 or less that brings you joy?
My mini food processor.
Brilliant. Love that.
I love it.
one book that you recommend that everybody should read?
The Untethered Soul.
One piece of advice for anyone who has listened to this podcast who wants to take the first step to accessing the abundant power of their own mind.
I would say make an action board.
And my final quickfire question is, if you had 1 extra hour each day, so there's no longer 24 hours, there's now 25. I believe, time is finite and it's the most valuable thing we have. So if you had 1 extra hour each day, what would you use that hour to do?
Reading. That's the thing that I always wish I had more time for.
Well, that's why I said at the start about Audible, because Audible has changed my life. I listen to books now when I'm walking, when I'm reading, when I'm running, when I'm driving, when I'm cooking. If I'm standing in a queue, I've got AirPods in, I am listening to a book. So that's how I manage to read more, because I just listen. So yeah, I agree that extra hour would be very well spent soaking in all these great books that are sitting around in my house that I want to read.
Same.
Thank you so much, Tara. Have a fantastic week. Thank you everyone for listening to the show. As always, we love to hear from you. So please do reach out. You can rate, review, all that good stuff, and reach out to us on social. Have a great week and stay safe.
Thank you.